Well, good morning, Southern Oregon. Alice Lema and Pete Belcastro here for the Real Estate Show. We're here once a week talking about all things real estate, and today we're going to be talking about post fires, what's going on. We have an amazing guest. We have Brad Bennington from the Builders Association, and we're also going to check in here with Pete. Pete was one of the poor souls that lost his house. How are things going with you, Pete?
Oh, Alice, it's been a little over 2 weeks. And so, you just, you mourn and then you go on. I think again, I was lucky I had a place to go to where so many people didn't. And that's really such a big difference in terms of me, but we're doing fine. And, and people's support has been really wonderful. And that's been great. The reason we got Brad here today, isn't this still the topic? Everybody's talking about this, right? I mean, that's all we're talking about. And the the Builders Association have a role to play in this. I hope they're going to be at the table when the discussions take place about how to rebuild and what to rebuild with. That's what we hope to find out today, because we had a tremendous loss of homes here. And how we do that is really the story going to be for the next few years, and how well we do it, how we clean it up, all the different issues that are still out there that there's no answer. There's no answers today. You don't have an answer and I don't have an answer. We're just trying to figure out day by day how to get going and start whatever it does to move on to the next phase.
Well, and we just have so many people that don't have a place to live. Yeah. And we're starting to find out some big number of them did not have insurance. And that's going to make it really hard. And like you keep saying, now it's starting to look like people are going to leave the area and maybe not come back.
Right. And that's that's what happened in Paradise. And we compare ourselves to that a lot. Paradise, the community is scattered, and people in my park, they've all scattered. They're gone. Unless you have a family here, there's people who live in Klamath, Brookings, you name it. They've doubled up in families. You want to talk about the real estate market? We should do a show just on the demand right now for multifamily housing.
And RVs. Do you see everybody's got RVs? And I'm so happy that the county and the city are not bugging people, because you're not actually supposed to have that. But you see the electrical cords go into the house, and they're putting somebody up, and God bless them for doing that.
Yeah, lots of people living together. So today's show is really going to be good, because we're going to start the process of rebuilding. How do we start to come back now that the fire's out? We can drive down Highway 99. You can see it for yourself. You can see the destruction. How do we start to rebuild? And maybe we start that today here on our show with Brad about how we're going to do it.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking to the Executive Officer of the Building Association, Southern Oregon, Brad Bennington. So he'll be speaking with us here right after this lovely announcement from one of our very much appreciated sponsors. So do not touch that dial. Pete and Alice will be right back. Well, welcome back, Southern Oregon, to the Real Estate Show. I'm Alice Lema here with my partner in crime, Pete Belcastro. We're both brokers here in Southern Oregon with John L. Scott, and we're back visiting with Brad Bennington, who is the Executive Officer of the Builders Association here in Southern Oregon, also known as BASO, and he's going to bring us up to speed on some of the situation with building and the fires and what's going on in Southern Oregon. So welcome, Brad. Thank you for being on the show today.
Well, Alice, great to see you, and Pete. Always great to hang out with you guys. You guys are so smart.
Well, sometimes. So, so many folks have lost their home. If you could just maybe elaborate a little bit about what the Builders Association has been witnessing, and just kind of bring us up to speed from your point of view.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Alice. Well, let me give you just a little bit of a background on us, so you have some context on our ability to kind of look at this deal. So Builders Association got started back in 1965. We are a self-funding nonprofit, and what we do is we furnish education, advocacy, and policy support to the building industry in Southern Oregon. And these days we provide those services to Jackson, Josephine, Coos, and Curry County. And the goal of all of that is to help create construction practices that result in housing and commercial projects that are safe, sustainable, and affordable. So we're the people that work with our regulators and our legislators. So everyone wants building to be safe. Everyone wants to be sustainable. But if it's safe and sustainable, and if it's not affordable, if no one can afford it, then it's not very helpful, not very useful. And we're a self-funding non-for-profit, which means we create the funds that we operate on. So we don't go out with our hand out and ask people to give us money so that we can do what we do. All the services that we provide to the community, we provide for free. So kind of unusual that way. So that's who we are and what we do. And now with regard to the situation at hand, what we know is that about September 8th, a series of fires destroyed the largest amount of housing in the history of Oregon. That's what we know.
Wow.
And here in Jackson County, we think that we've lost somewhere around or perhaps more than 3,000 housing units. Now that 3,000 housing units, if you look at some of our national disasters, if you look at what happened in Louisiana or Texas or, Florida, back in, I think it was 92 with Hurricane Andrew, maybe that doesn't sound like such a bad deal, but let me give you just an example of the scale of the devastation with regard to where we live. So a short time ago, I was visiting with Mayor Chris Luz of the city of Phoenix. Phoenix is a community that only has 4,500 people for its population, and they lost over 1,000 housing units. 1,000 housing units in a community that only has 4,500 people in it in the first place.
Oh,
that's
wow.
a catastrophic loss on a scale that most people have no idea. I mean, what do you do? What do you do when you've lost housing for literally 1/3 of your entire population, right?
Well, Brad, that's
what we're looking at.
Okay, hang on, Brad, just a second, because you're going too much out. You're going to jumping too far ahead of us here. What do we do now? I mean, we look at this thing, and there's such a loss. People have scattered. Insurance money's come in for some people. Some people didn't have insurance money. We've got tent cities around. We've got wonderful people coming forth to help, those in need here and stuff. And it seems like this is going to be a big time for the Builders Association and the builders in general to have I hope, a say at the table that whoever's going to start talking about this, some government agency, that you guys are going to be there, because it seems to me that we can't do anything, change anything, unless the builders are on board to doing something different than what we've done before.
Pete, this is where, I remind your listeners that you are a man who, not only are you reporting about this, but you are a man who has also lost his own home because of this devastating set of fires that went through. And I just want to remind you that, man, God bless you. My heart and my prayers are with you and so many of these other people, but you're actually living this thing out. So, and you had to move out of the area because you with all your connections couldn't find accommodations. And what you're talking about is the fact that as we're, sitting here talking about this 15 days after it happened, just literally 2 weeks and 1 day after it happened, we are only in the beginning stages of a series of events that are going to have to happen before we can even begin the rebuild. Pete, what we know is if you look just down into Northern California in the city of Paradise, which had a devastating fire of their own 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, it's taken them almost 2 years just to get to the point where they could begin doing the rebuild. Now it's a different situation because that was a community of 27,000 people. The fire was mostly contained in the Paradise area, but the topography there is very different and the situation is different. But the reality is we have a tremendous amount of the loss went right along Bear Creek. So we've got a waterway running through it. The good news is we have very good access compared to what we had in Paradise. We have good access. But we have an entire regulatory suite of obligations that we're going to have to satisfy on the cleanup side before we can render these lots into a buildable condition and begin building again.
Okay, you met with the commissioners this week, I know. What's happening? I mean, is the talk just beginning? Is that what we're doing, just beginning now to address these things? Are we expecting too much too fast from like Alice and me? Because we think, we should have it cleared off already and start doing something.
Well, if we were living in 1960s Oregon instead of 2020 Oregon, I think you'd see a lot of heavy equipment out there just going right after it. But one thing that has not been rescinded is all the rules that pertain to DEQ and EPA regulations. So When you have a fire, you have a lot of contaminated products that you have to deal with. Everything that burns goes down into the soil. And then what do you do with it now? So that comes under FEMA jurisdiction. So FEMA, of course, is Federal Emergency Management Agency. They got agents on site here beginning Sunday, and Greg Walden met with them, and our county commissioners, city mayors, Mayor Chris Luz of Phoenix and Darby Ayers Flood of Talent met with them, beginning to establish the protocols and the methodology for moving forward. But Pete and Alice, the first thing that we have to do is we have to return before we do any rebuilding at all, we have to return the site into a buildable condition, which means that we have to deal with all the contaminated materials that were created during the fire. So if there's any asbestos there, that has to be dealt with. If there's any lead-based paint materials there, that has to be dealt with. If there's any chemical contaminants that if there were for instance, if there were chemicals stored, a lot of the damage wasn't just residences, it was also builders. So, or not builders, but business owners. So if you were a business who had chemicals stored on site at your business, that's going to have to get dealt with. All of these things are going to have to get dealt with before we can begin building again.
And that's going to take, Alice, what do you think? I mean, this is not going to happen overnight next year even. It seems like to me it's going to take, as Paradise experienced in Redding and Santa Rosa and every place else, years just to clean it up. And you say, Brad, I never thought of that part of it, just to get a buildable lot or a lot that you can even return a manufactured home onto. There's nothing, you can't do that right now. Wow, that's going to be a huge effort. Who's in charge of that? Is FEMA in charge of that, or is the county or the city, or who will be in charge of that?
So the question that you just asked is a really good question, and I'm a construction expert, but I'm not a government policy expert, although sometimes those two get conflated a little bit. So what I can tell you is the general hierarchy of command is federal, state, county, and city. That's generally how things work. So because Greg Walden was able to go to President Trump and get the emergency disaster declaration signed, that made federal resources available to help, which is really huge. And Congressman Greg Walden, we owe him a big, big thank you, because he did that literally in a matter of days. I mean, days. He had federal assets available. So FEMA, they have the ability to help, but their help is also segregated into certain slots. They kind of stay within their lane. So there's things that they're going to do, and they're going to do the things that are too expensive for the city and the county to do, especially on the cleanup side. But even though they're going to be monitoring that and paying for a good deal of it, there's still a tremendous amount of work that all of us have to do locally, which we'll probably talk about on the other side of the break that's going to be coming up here in a little bit.
Well, I can certainly see it, Alice. I don't know. What do you think? This is not an easy, when you start breaking it down piece by piece, you see how difficult and what a challenging job we have ahead of us. My goodness.
Well, it's so exciting to have Brad on the show this early in the process, because I think he can bring a lot of calm and a lot of, just logistical information to people. I know that a lot of our clients have huge contamination concerns, and not just for the land, but also running into Bear Creek and into the watersheds. And when cars burn down, when houses burn down, refrigerators, air conditioning units, like
right.
What happens to all those chemicals when they combust? So people are really worried. And how do you know if it's really cleaned up properly? Like how do you know before you go buy a house on that land again?
I have a number that was calculated by one of our very, very experienced local builders. On the other side of the break, I'll share the number that he calculated with you, and it's going to knock your socks off.
Okay, so we definitely want people to stay tuned for that. And one of the other questions that came up was, are they really going to build the same density? We'll talk about that on the other side of the break, because I heard rumors that Medford Estates had already sold Medford Mobile Home Estates had already sold maybe even a few days before the fire. And there's rumors it's not gonna be a mobile home park. It might be high-end duplexes or apartments. So are you gonna be privy to any of those pieces of information ahead of time?
Well, when it comes to building permits and things of that nature, those are all public records available to everyone. Business plans that individuals or companies might be doing, those are not public information. They probably shouldn't be. But one thing you're right about is what gets built back is going to look very different than what burned down.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about that, Brad. You're absolutely right.
So we're speaking with Brad Bennington, the Executive Officer, Builders Association of Southern Oregon, also known as BASO. Pete Belcastro and I will be right back with the Real Estate Show. Lots more information coming. Do not touch that dial. We'll be back shortly. Well, welcome back to the Real Estate Show. Folks, I'm Alice Lema here with Pete Belcastro. We're both brokers at John L. Scott, Southern Oregon. And we are really lucky to have grabbed Brad Bennington today. He is the Executive Officer of the Builders Association of Southern Oregon, and just a wealth of information and a lot of calm and a lot of logistical advice. So we were just talking, Brad, before the break about contamination, cleanup, and that sort of thing. And I wonder if you could address some of our local folks' worries about refrigerators, Freon, burnt cars. You mentioned asbestos. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah. So Alice, thank you so much to you and Pete for allowing us to get this information out there. And you're right, a lot of people, they're concerned. They want to know what's going on, and the reality is, because we live where we live, Jackson County is so well managed. Oregon has 36 counties in it, and Jackson, our county commissioners, our county administrator, our staff, if you wanted to pick anywhere to have a disaster, this is where you would pick. I mean, if you would have asked anyone, I'm going to go down a little bunny trail, but you'll forgive me because you're a nice person. If you would have told anybody 1 year, 5 years, 10 years ago, there's going to be a catastrophic series of fires in Jackson County that are going to destroy 3,000 homes in less than 72 hours, because that's what happened. We're going to destroy 3,000 homes in less than 72 hours. How many people are going to die? They'd say 500, 300, 400 maybe, and the actual number is 3. So, right now the answer is 3. So what that tells you is that we're in a very well-managed county, that the homes that people lived in did their jobs. When the time came to leave, they left. The homes were sacrificed. The people lived. That's just something I want to talk about just really quickly is all of the bad things that did not happen with regard to the loss of human life.
Yeah, we were
lost
so
a lot
lucky.
of houses.
Yeah, we were so lucky.
Yeah. 3,000 homes destroyed. We've lost 3 lives, and apparently one of those may have been dead before the fire happened, and the other 2 apparently may have been people who just chose not to leave that could have left their homes but chose not to. So good job our first responders just did an amazing job. But Alice, getting back to your question on the cleanup side. So many of these units date back to the 1960s and 70s. And for people that are old like me, we will remember that the reason that those mobile homes wound up there in the first place is many of those are in what we call a floodplain. And you can't build conventional housing in a floodplain. Now, some people are going to say, well, Brad, I know where there's a house built in a floodplain. And the answer is yes, you can, but they take very expensive compliance measures to do that. And generally it's just not done. So what you have is you had these mobile home areas. Many of those mobile homes were older, and the likelihood of those being rebuilt is probably nil, because back in the late 60s, early 70s, you could buy a mobile home for $20,000 or $30,000, right? And those economics don't apply anymore. I was talking to John Schleining the other day, and John told me that he was just kind of looking around for mobile homes. He said the least expensive mobile homes he could find were $140,000 and up, and the most ambitious ambitious delivery they could provide was 6 months.
Oh my
Months out.
gosh.
Well,
So even if
Brad,
even if you had, go ahead, Pete.
I would say that goes back to tell us the major problem. You know, Alice, when Brad was first on our show, probably 10 years ago, we really didn't have much to talk about at that time with Brad because there was no building going on. And you know that, Alice, you're a broker in those times. Do you remember? There was no building.
Right. Well, we were just coming out of the crash.
We were right, but there was nothing building. The Builders Association was a pretty quiet place. The skilled labor had disappeared from our valley, and the few builders that were left, you know, were scrambling like crazy. Okay, so now let's fast forward here. Before this crisis, look, the housing was, we didn't have any, we only had 400 listings in Jackson County. They are doing some construction in East Medford, in the, you know, the nice neighborhoods there in East Medford and out in White City. Now look what we've got. Brad has been complaining we haven't had enough skilled labor in this valley for years. We don't have enough of this. We don't have enough of that to do what we're doing now. Now you add all this on top, Brad. What should we expect from the builders? Tell us what you think.
Let me, Pete, with your permission, let me kind of save the builder's response for maybe a little bit further down the road, because I do want to share a number with you and with your listeners that was calculated by one of our most accurate builders, and it has to do with the cleanup. You know, what we know is that because of the contaminated materials, we know that a lot of that material is just literally going to have to be removed because that's the protocol. And this builder calculated the amount of cubic yards. Now, a cubic yard is 3 by 3 by 3, and 6 inches deep is what the FEMA officials have given as an opinion. Now, there's going to be some site-specific testing, but they said on average, we think about 6 inches of material is going to be coming out of there.
You're talking about dirt. You're talking about dirt off the lot?
Yeah.
6 inches deep?
Yes. 6 inches deep. Well, that's kind of what they did down in Paradise. So that's kind of what they're basing the model on. 6 inches is the idea. If you dig down 6 inches, that's going to get the majority of the contaminants, and then that material is going to have to get exported off site. So just with the areas inside the cities that we know about, this builder did the calculation. Okay, a cubic yard of material is 3 by 3 by 3. He came up with a net of 2.6 million cubic yards.
Oh no.
Now, but it's more than that, because anytime you excavate, when you excavate dirt, it grows 30%. So it's actually closer to 3 million cubic yards of material are going to have to be removed from all of these sites and transported somewhere and dealt with. So if you think about that, and let me put that in perspective, is a normal dump truck holds about 10 yards, right? So when you think of a dump truck with a standard box on it, that's about 10 yards of material. Okay. So what is that? Is that 300,000 dump trucks? Is that up to?
Oh man.
Okay, but you guys, where does it go? I mean, okay.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Does it all go up to the Dry Creek landfill here? Is that where it goes? Because if it is, my goodness, that thing is going to fill up with, they're going to have a whole lot of stuff come in there.
I don't think they can take, that's all hazardous waste, isn't it?
Well, they take it.
There's a difference between hazardous waste and contaminated waste. And some types of waste can be seasoned. In other words, for instance, if you have waste that's been contaminated by petroleum products, you can actually aerate that over a period of time, and then it's safe again. So, but what this underlines, Alice and Pete, is we are going to have to work with our regulatory officials to deal with this, because the scope of this thing is so huge. You know, you got to remember, we live in a very sparsely populated area. You know, our Jackson County has about 2 million acres in it, and there's only 230,000 people that live in the whole county. So again, for the small amount of people that we have that live here, this is a scale of disaster that is just much bigger than we can deal with the financial resources that we have. So we really need this partnership with our regulatory officials.
So how are they going to decide what order, like what municipality to work in? Because I drove through the disaster areas today. Who decides whether Ashland, Phoenix, or Talent, you know, or Central Point? I mean, we had damage in Central Point. How do they make this all work?
Yeah. Well, of course, each city has its own jurisdictional identity. So you've got the city of Ashland, the city of Talent, the city of Phoenix, and of course, presumably the city of Central Point as well. To the extent that they have damages, the city is going to be working with the residents of that city, whether it's the business owners or the people that have lost housing. For instance, I know Chris Luz has been working literally 20 hours a day since this happened, working with everyone on behalf of his people that live there in Phoenix. He's literally been sleeping 4 hours a night. And this is where I remind people that these guys don't get paid anything. I mean, a mayor and your city council positions in most cities don't pay, literally zero. So these people are literally serving their communities for no money, just to help get people through this thing. So my hat is certainly off to Mayor Luz and the other city officials that are working. But to answer your question, Alice, as who starts first, I think the answer is it's whoever does a better job of accessing the resources that Congressman Walden has made available through FEMA. So FEMA's national. Part of that aid is going to come through the governor's office. We know that Governor Brown was down here a couple of days ago. She kind of looked around a little bit. So the governor is going to have a hand in this at the state level. But the people that are really going to be driving this as far as getting the resources where they need to be in the cities, I think the mayor and the mayor and the administrative staff of those cities are going to be very, very key on how fast and how well things happen in the cities that they live in.
So that makes it sound like whoever gets their paperwork in first gets the money. Is that what we're saying?
Alice, I don't think we're going to run out of money. Greg Walden's office told me that FEMA, now don't hold me to the fire on this, but I've heard that FEMA for the state of Oregon has $22 billion available for this disaster. So I don't think we're going to burn through the money that fast, but just it is a lot. But just getting those resources allocated where they need to go in a timely manner is going to be a big effort.
Yeah, and Pete, do you know what the plan is for the park that you lived in? Do you know what's going to happen to that?
I actually talked to several people. You guys brought up Medford Estates earlier. I had Alice and I had a listing in there that survived. Remember Alice, one of 8 that somehow is still there. And it's so interesting because we could have sold that thing 1,000 times, right? Couldn't we, Alice? Because so many people were calling. We took it off the market because there's no power, there's no water, things like that. So the parks are going to come back. How they're going to look is going to be different, I think, more than anything else. But it's not going to be the same people who are going to move back in there because the people who left or who burned, like myself, we're gone. And so that's the sad part. It's going to come back, I'm sure, in some way. But as Brad said, unless we change regulatory procedures here to allow more building on these areas, which we ought to be able to do, how can we handle and take care of the people who've lost things and build for a new community? That's the biggest question. And I know the builders have a big role to play in this. As we talked about last week with Tina Grimes, remember, Alan, about the realtors have a real role to play in this recovery that we're going to do. And I hope we can do it really well together and make ourselves proud of what we come up with out of this disaster.
Well, and as Brad mentioned, we've already had a lot of cooperation just as a community for being such a small batch of people. We're tiny but mighty, aren't we? We really came together and worked well together. So we've got a break coming up. We're talking to Brad Bennington, the executive officer, the Builders Association here in Southern Oregon, also known as BASO, trying to get some information about what to expect next from not only the builders, but the cleanup and FEMA and timing. It's all going to be about timing. So don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after a word from our much appreciated sponsors. Well, welcome back to the Real Estate Show, folks. I'm Alice Lema here with Pete Belcastro. We're both brokers at John L. Scott, Southern Oregon. And we're here talking to Brad Bennington, the executive office of the Builders Association here in Southern Oregon. And Pete,
Howdy.
Thank you, Brad. Pete, you wanted to give an update. I know you've lost your home and you're in touch with some of the relief organizations. Why don't you remind us what's going on?
Well, I just wanted to remind people, the Oregon Association of Realtors received a grant. It's called the Wildfire Relief Fund. It's open to anybody who lost, homeowners or renters who lost in the fires. They're offering $1,000. You can go to OregonRealtors.org. It's right on the homepage there, and you can apply for that. So renters also do that because they're going to do it until the money goes out. And as you guys said earlier, it's first come, first served in these kinds of things. So that's really a wonderful thing. There's also the Home Foundation of the Oregon Association of Realtors also has a separate fund there. So check those out at OregonRealtors.org. And locally, we want to give a shout out, Alice, to what's a group called Rogue Food Unites. It's the restaurants in our community. There's many, many of them. They have been feeding daily people out at the Expo Park and in other places, shelters at El Tapatio and around the community. They're basically feeding the Hispanic community because those were the people who predominantly lost their homes and had no place to go. It's a wonderful group. They are working together. They have fed it one day this week. They fed over 4,000 meals that came from local restaurants that they delivered to these communities. So
wow.
Rogue Food Unites, and you can help them out. We hope to have them on maybe our show in a couple of weeks because that's truly community spirit and great things for the restaurants, and thank them for doing that because they've had a rough time, as you know, as well. But look, restaurants are coming through. How cool is that? And they're feeding people who really deserve good food and not some, bad stuff that may come in from someplace else that you don't even know what you're eating. So good for them.
Yeah, we appreciate all the help we've been receiving. I know a lot of those restaurants are also feeding the utility workers, the emergency responders. Everybody's getting good Southern Oregon cuisine.
Yeah, and you don't even think about all the infrastructure that was destroyed. Say in Ashland, you don't even have much cable anymore there because the lines were destroyed along Highway 99, things like that. Water is mains and all sorts of electrician things. It's really, as Brad has called it, a catastrophe, and it affects so many. You don't think it does, but actually, when you start looking around it, it really does. Even the people who lost their Alice, along Highway 99 and those kinds of places, and up in Shady Cove. And so it really has an effect on so many of us, and we know somebody. I don't think there's probably anybody, and maybe in this whole Jackson County, who doesn't know somebody who hasn't been affected in some way by this disaster.
Or 10, yeah. And then we didn't really talk much about what's going on in Eagle Point. Brad, do you have any updates about construction out there?
Yeah, so of course, Eagle Point didn't get the scale of disaster that Town like Phoenix did, but of course there's damage out there literally there's damage all over the state of Oregon, which kind of brings me to talk a little bit about something that you and Pete had mentioned earlier, which is disasters attract what we call the construction gypsies. So this is where I want to really encourage your listeners to be very, very careful. If they're receiving any solicitations of work from people, make sure that they are a licensed Oregon contractor, because these gigantic disasters, they attract a lot of unscrupulous people. They're there for the quick buck when people are vulnerable, when they're already hurting. They promise this, they promise that, they promise the moon, they take their money, and bad things happen. So just Google Oregon CCB. It literally takes 2 minutes. Anybody that's going to do business, that wants to do business with you, needs to be an Oregon licensed contractor. Don't do business with anybody without a contract. Make sure you do your due diligence. You've already become a victim once because of this horrible fire disaster. Don't become a victim twice. Be very, very careful. All of your listeners that are going to do business with anyone, make sure they're an Oregon licensed contractor. Make sure you have a contract. And if anyone has a question, call our office. We do all the consultation work that we do for the public, we do for free. If you have any questions at all, give us a call. We're happy to look into it for you.
Oh, that's awesome. What's the phone number there, Brad?
Yeah, so our phone number here is 773-2872. And our web address is very simple. It's buildso.com.
Oh yeah,
buildso.com.
Yeah, nice and short.
And we've got resources there for you. We've got recovery resources. Pretty much find anything that you need here. So I do want to talk a little bit about, for people that are interested in discussions about how they're going to rebuild. Again, it's the state that regulates planning code. but it's your local building department that you're going to be working with on the rebuild. So if you're in Phoenix, you're going to be working with the Phoenix Building Department. They've got good city manager there. Chris Lesimir doing a great job. It's going to be daunting, but put together a list of the things that you need to do in order. We're happy to help anybody that wants to do that, see what it looks like. I can tell you that for the people that have lost their home, our heart goes out to you. Losing your home and losing the belongings that are in it, it's just one of those difficult things that anyone can have happen to them. But our community, our builder community, is here to help. We will rebuild. We're going to build back stronger and better than we had in the first place. But this is going to be a team effort. It's going to take all of us working together. And please be in contact with your state regulators, because I'll tell you, the two people who are state legislators are Jeff Golden and Pam Marsh, and getting their help on flexibility for planning code administration is going to be critical. So if you live in these areas, please contact Jeff Golden and Pam Marsh and say, please, please, please work with our building community and be as flexible as you can with regard to this disaster so that we can get into our homes as quickly as possible. The biggest difficulty our industry has, Alice and Pete, is regulatory oversight. 40% of everything that we do is regulatory oversight. So if the state, if they are willing to give us some flexibility in helping rebuild people's homes, it's going to go much, much faster. If the state does not give us regulatory relief, it's going to go much, much slower. So contact Pam Marsh and Jeff Golden and say, please, please, please work with our building policy people to streamline regulations as much as possible until we can get these homes rebuilt.
And some of that can look like maybe a reduction in the system development fees, or a postponement. Maybe they would let us pay them over time. I think there's a lot of people that would want to jump in and start rebuilding sooner if they could, if they had a little bit of flexibility on how much money the different cities charge you. Because it can be quite a lot.
Well, there shouldn't be any SDCs to replace a pre-existing structure because the SDCs are for new construction. So when you're replacing something, that shouldn't happen. But the reality is we're going to have, as Pete mentioned earlier, we're going to have different kinds of housing replacing the housing that was there in many cases. And now you're going to be having a zoning and a planning discussion. And if we have support from our legislators, those can be fairly quick conversations. And if we don't get support, they're going to be very long, drawn out conversations that are just going to take longer to do the rebuild.
So you don't think they're going to charge extra to replace well, you know what? We're going to be running out of time here. We need to have you back, Brad. And Pete, you wanted to jump in? We just got a quick minute left.
We don't want it to look like paradise 2 years later.
Still, yeah, we want to get something done. We don't
want that to happen here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so, you bet.
Well, and we want
get her done. Get her done. Get people back in their homes.
Yeah, and we want as much housing to be replaced as possible. So a lot of us are really nervous about what's going to happen to those mobile home parks. But that is for another conversation. So thank you, Southern Oregon, for listening. We'll be repeating this tomorrow at 6 p.m. In the meantime, have a beautiful weekend and hug everybody. Just, those of us that are lucky enough to still have a house, reach out and help somebody who doesn't. Thank you, Brad Bennington. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.